Good afternoon. I'm Congresswoman Terri Sewell, and I want to welcome you to another edition of Terri Talks. Today, we are discussing a program that benefits millions of Americans and more than 164,000 of our constituents in Alabama's 7th Congressional District. This program helps our seniors, children, people with disabilities live with dignity. In fact, it is the most successful anti-poverty program in our nation's history. That program is Social Security. Today, August 14th, marks the 90th anniversary of Social Security. On August 14th, 1935, President Franklin Roosevelt signed the act into law. Since then, it has served as a lifeline for so many of our nation's seniors, ensuring that they can retire with dignity after a lifetime of work. For many, it is their sole source of income. And it is how they put food on the table, gas in the cars, and medicine in their cabinets. Make no mistake, Social Security is not an entitlement. Rather, it's an earned benefit that our workers pay into with every paycheck. Throughout my time in Congress, I have been fighting to strengthen and expand Social Security benefits because without it, so many of my constituents would not be able to make ends meet. Sadly, too many of our colleagues across the aisle don't see it the same way. Republicans in Congress have spent years pledging to cut and privatize Social Security benefits behind closed doors in order to pad the pockets of the ultra wealthy. And since taking office, President Trump has made it clear that he intends to make good on that promise. His administration has fired thousands of Social Security employees. They broke the agency's website. They have closed field offices all across this nation, and they even propose forcing seniors to make claims in person rather than over the phone. Elon Musk recently called Social Security the greatest Ponzi scheme of all times. And President Trump's Treasury Secretary called the big ugly bill is just a, quote, backdoor for privatizing Social Security. It is clear that the Social Security program has never been more at risk than it is today. If we want to save it, we need to speak up and speak out against the dangerous agenda of the Trump administration. No one in Congress has been fighting harder for Social Security than our special guest today. He is the proud representative of the 1st Congressional District of Connecticut and the ranking member and soon to be again the chair of the Ways and Means Subcommittee on Social Security. I was honored to host him in Montgomery, Alabama in 2020 for a very special Social Security town hall. And I am honored today to welcome my colleague and friend, Congressman John Larson. Hi, John.
Good to see you and great to be with you and the citizens of Alabama again. And I couldn't have said it better myself, except you're a little modest. Social Security, as you pointed out, the #1 anti-poverty program for the elderly, the #1 anti-poverty program for children until the tax credit becomes permanent. You have fought for both of those. And not only that, these bills don't happen by happenstance, but when someone fights as hard as you do in your district, not many citizens are aware that there are 5 million of our fellow Americans that currently get below poverty level checks from Social Security. That means they've paid into a system all their lives in the wealthiest nation in the world, and they get a below poverty level check from their government. Thank you for your fight to elevate what happens to be a majority of women in this country who receive those checks. And of those women, a majority of them are women of color. People are mortified when they find out that these people who have served their country extraordinarily well get a below poverty level check. Thank you for making sure that that was included in our legislation so that no one will ever work and pay into our system and get a below poverty level check. The citizens of Alabama ought to be aware that it was Terri Sewell that made sure that no one will ever retire into poverty again, because the new Social Security floor will always be 125% of what the poverty level is. And that comes from someone who uniquely understands what people go through. And as you indicated, this is the first time Social Security will be enhanced in more than 50 years. We're not just simply fighting to protect its privatization, as we are, but we're also seeking to enhance benefits for everyone. There hasn't been an improvement in Social Security since 1971.
1971.
Richard Nixon was president of the United States back then. And so I'm proud of the work and efforts of our subcommittee, of Rich Neal, our chairman, and especially of your efforts, because like they say, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes people that understand how uniquely this impacts the citizens we're sworn to serve. And God bless you. You're among the most vociferous in your advocation of making sure that we not only protect Social Security, that we expand it, and we resist every attempt, as you noted, by people like Elon Musk, who have their eyes on the $2,700,000,000,000 trust fund that is the people's money, not Elon Musk's, not Wall Street's, not this private sector, but what people have put together. And we're going to guarantee that it stays and belongs and gets returned to the people, but gets enhanced at the same time.
Well, thank you, John. No one has been more relentless, tireless, fierce advocate than you on Social Security. You have made it your congressional life's work to make sure that we not only protect Social Security, but we expand it and strengthen it. And your leadership, I mean, if we as members of the Ways and Means Subcommittee on Social Security or anything, we are led by an amazing person in you who have made this literally your biggest fight. And so can you talk to us a little bit about why this fight is so important to you personally? And can you talk a little bit about, because you've been on the subcommittee either as chair or ranking member for a while now, and you've done such an amazing job of always centering our caucus on Social Security, but also this Congress on the importance of Social Security, the COLA, the fact that this is not some entitlement program. It's an earned benefit that people pay in after a lifetime of work. And I have to tell you, when you were talking about people getting Social Security checks that are below the poverty level, a lot of them live in my district. We're talking about folks that worked a lifetime and they get they literally over the course of a year may get $18,000 or $20,000. And it just breaks my heart. So you're finding our seniors in a time when they need to be retiring with dignity, choosing to buy their medicine or keep their lights on. And no one should have to make that choice in this great country. Why is this fight so important to you?
Well, like you, these are the people we represent, and whether it's Alabama or whether it's Connecticut, these are everyday American citizens. It brings to mind the genius of Franklin Delano Roosevelt when he saw that there was a need to make sure after the Great Depression that people who participate in our entrepreneurial capitalistic system needed a safety net, which turns out to be the safety net for capitalism as well as individuals and people. And so there's over 70 million plus Social Security recipients currently. Over 40% of them, this is the only benefit that they have. And as you pointed out at the outset, that's a pension benefit,
Yeah.
that's spousal, that's widow, that's dependent children, and disability payments. Disability payments, in fact, that more veterans rely on than they do the VA.
That's right. That's
And
right.
nobody gets wealthy on Social Security. But imagine, because of inaction in Congress and why we're leading the fight, not only to protect Social Security, but expand it, is because it hasn't been expanded across the board since 1971. Now, people say, no, wait a minute. Didn't Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan and Bob Dole? Well, yes, Bob Dole, a Republican senator, Ronald Reagan, president. Reagan wanted to privatize. Dole said that would be a mistake. Tip said we need to improve the program. We need to protect the program. The compromise was, and Tip was outnumbered, is that Social Security stayed intact, but they raised the age.
Yeah.
That's the only thing they did. However, it was a compromise, but not a good compromise. Why? For every year you raise the age, that's a 7%, ready for this? 7% decrease in your payment. So back then, it went from 65 to 67. That's a 14% decrease. And as you know, our colleagues on the other side haven't produced any kind of plan, but what they said is we ought to raise the age to 70, which would mean a 21% cut in benefits. Imagine a person who all they have is Social Security as a benefit currently that hasn't been enhanced since 1971, and telling them that now, because they say, well, people are living longer. Well, that's great, and that's good news. But if you're living longer, you should be living on less. Add to
Makes
that,
no sense.
and you know this because you got over 70 million participants, and this hasn't peaked yet because 10,000 baby boomers a day become eligible for Social Security. And they're now looking at that and said, hey, wait a minute. You mean this hasn't been adjusted since 1971? And now there's talk about privatizing it, and not just talk, as the Secretary of the Treasury said the other day. Yeah, it was a backdoor way through the so-called big, beautiful bill to privatize Social Security. You pointed out that well in your opening remarks. How are they doing that? Yeah. They want to discredit Social Security initially by saying, oh, well, they cut the phone service. They laid off 7,000 employees. They're closing regional offices, and they're saying, well, it's hard to get in contact with them. No kidding. If you cut people, if you don't have adequate phone service and you're closing regional offices, what they're trying to do is damage the brand from within and then say it's an ineffective agency. Nothing could be further from the truth. I live in an insurance capital of the world in Hartford, Connecticut. To administer insurance companies that don't even come remotely close to 70 million people who they insure averages 16 to 28% administratively. Social Security in its heyday was administered with 1.5% administrative costs.
Efficiency. It's an efficient program.
Right. And so the Republicans have cut that to under 1%, making it near impossible to administer something. And remember, in the private sector, it's administered for 16 to 28%, and they're asking Social Security to do it for under 1%, and they're calling it inefficient. No, what's inefficient is Congress's ability to address this. That's why your work is so important. And your advocacy has been so, because under our proposal, what we're going to do is make sure that Social Security is adequately funded, adequately administered and not only preserves and protects and extends the solvency of the program, but enhances it. So, as I pointed out initially, that no one can ever pay into a system and end up with a below poverty level check, so
That's
that
exactly.
everybody will get an across the board increase, so that we will eliminate the taxation on Social Security benefits. When you retire and still have to work, there's no rationale or reason to double tax you again and on your Social Security benefits that you've already paid taxes on. You understand this. So does Rich Neal. So do the Democrats on the Ways and Means Committee. And that's why we're fighting so hard to eliminate those disability waiting periods where people have died waiting to get a disability check, and to make sure, most of all, that nobody can work all their lives and retire into poverty. And you know what? It's an economic development plan for every single congressional district and Senate. Where do these people spend the money that they get from Social Security?
It goes right back into the economy.
Right back in their districts and in their economy.
In
And thank
fact,
you for your efforts on that.
absolutely. And you can't, the numbers don't lie. And in my district alone, Alabama's 7th congressional district, first of all, let me just tell you, under the leadership of John Larson, all of us get this really nice Social Security card that tells us exactly the information that's pertinent for our district. So there are 164,410 Social Security recipients in Alabama's 7th congressional district who received $256 million in monthly benefits, including 103,000 retirees, 15,000, almost 16,000 children, almost 7,000 widows, 3,000 spouses, 32,000 disabled workers. And so the numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
In fact, it is truly the largest and best anti-poverty program that we've ever had in our country. And to think that this administration, led by Donald Trump and House and Senate Republicans, are doing all they can to undermine it. I mean, the website went down under the Trump administration. They're closing field offices. They're laying off people. And I don't know about you, John, but when I think about my caseload in my district, we have such a backlog on deserving people who are waiting for their disability. You said it. People are literally waiting years for their disability checks. And it's just simply unacceptable. One of the things that you referenced and that I referenced was Elon Musk calling it a Ponzi scheme. And Secretary Bessent, who is the Treasury Secretary, said that the big bill that just passed is really a backdoor to privatizing it. Let's roll some footage on one or both of these.
Tonight, comments from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent have a lot of people concerned about the future of Social Security. During an event in D.C. yesterday, Treasury Secretary Bessent suggested the new Trump accounts for children could be a step towards removing the government's role in funding the retirement program. Watch this clip.
Now, with these accounts, they can be part of the system. In a way, it is a backdoor for privatizing Social Security. Like, Social Security is a defined benefit plan paid out that, to the extent that if all of a sudden these accounts grow and you have in the hundreds of thousands of dollars for your retirement, then that's a game changer too.
Yeah, a backdoor for privatizing Social Security. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Can you talk a little bit about why privatizing Social Security would be such a disaster?
Well, the first thing you always have to ask, and the good news is the American people are not as dumb as the Trump administration thinks they are. They think they can pull the wool over everyone's eyes. When they hired Elon Musk to go in there, and imagine, and these 24-year-old Doge people, what reason or rationale do they have to go through people's personal records and documents and financial data, other them for their own value. Yeah. And in the process, you may recall that Donald Trump said to Elon Musk he wanted him to find $2 trillion in cuts. Well, it's no coincidence either that Social Security's trust fund is $2.7 trillion. And what Elon and the private sector is salivating over is getting their hands on the people's money. All of that money is the people. And some would argue, they say, well, wait a minute, the business community paid half of that. I said, well, yes, they do. They pay half of it to start, but they get fully compensated for that with a tax write-off. And who pays for that?
We do. American people.
So the Social Security is completely paid by the American people, and that trust fund is the people's trust fund. They want to grab it for the commission and the money that they could make out of that, which would be vast sums. We want to make sure that it stays in the hands of the people and the trust fund. And yes, we have recommendations to enhance it as well, but none of them include privatizing it. Because when you say to them, and they're talking about pensions alone, you say, well, will that cover spouses? Is it a guarantee? Will it cover children? Does it cover disability? And they go, well, no, this is about pensions. That's not what Social Security is about. And the American citizens know this. And that's why it was so important to stand up to these attempts by understanding what they want, very clear, is their hands on that $2 trillion. Now, would they be able to show you on paper that if they invested those large sums of money, could they return more? Yeah, you'd be able to show that. But when asked and put to the test, is it a guarantee? They go, oh, well, nothing's guaranteed. And we don't have to go back to 1929. All people have to do is go back to 2008, 2009, right, and look what happened when they saw their 401k become a 101k, and Social Security never missed a payment. Never has and never will, as long as Congress does its job, and especially if the program is not just saved, but enhanced the way you want it and I want it and all the Democrats on the committee. The irony is, Terri, that Republicans want it too, and they understand it when they see it. Put it out there for a vote, as we did in our amendment. And they voted against it, but immediately said, oh, no, we got to have a compromise. And as you suggested, but we want to do it behind closed doors. I said, why do you have to do it behind closed doors? This is America's #1 insurance program. The people understand it. They want to see you discuss this in the open. What would you do behind closed doors that you couldn't do in the open? They say, well, we want to compromise. On what? The people's money? What you would like to do with it? And what they'd like to do is raise the age. Yes. What they really like to do is privatize it. This is the people's money. It's going to remain the people's money as long as there are representatives that are willing to fight for it and not just protect it, but enhance it in the way that is going to benefit them. Imagine citizens in Alabama and Connecticut who haven't seen an enhancement since 1971, including in the that's why the AARP and others support this bill, because they've said even the COLA system, where people have seen some benefits during COVID, is still flawed. It's not based on the actual needs that seniors have. Our bill does. Mm-hmm. We make it reflect what seniors actually spend money on. They're not out buying new Maseratis and Rolls Royces and widescreen TVs and boats and yachts, etc. You know, it's not about the entire economy. It's only about what the seniors are impacted on by buying daily groceries, heating and cooling their home,
medicine,
their rents, medicines. You know this so well, Terri. And so that's why it's so important. And as we've said before, this is the lifeline for capitalism.
Yeah.
This is what allows people to take risk, knowing that even if they fail for some fault, not of their own, that there's a safety net there, that they can't fall through. It just hasn't been adjusted in more than 50 years and needs to be expanded in a way that it helps not only the individual, but the very economy we're trying to bolster during these inflationary times.
Exactly. I know that we all were at that rally. Hands off Social Security is all I can say. Hands off our Social Security. This is so important that we emphasize that it's an earned benefit. It's not an entitlement. It's an earned benefit. It is an insurance for all Americans, that there's a safety net that you can actually retire with dignity. A recent analysis by Trump's own chief actuary for Social Security said that the Republicans' big bill will actually accelerate the depletion of the Social Security Trust Fund. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? I mean, people are all concerned that we're going to run out of money when people need it. And we just got to make sure that we're not trying to do everything in our power to accelerate that depletion. And that's exactly what the bill will do, Trump's big ugly bill will do, and Republicans are seeking to do.
Exactly right, Terry. And by accelerating it, what it means is when we first introduced this bill, more than a decade now, the fund was not set to experience a loss until 2036. Mm-hmm. So even so, that was still not that far away. Yeah. But now it's been a decade, and the fund now, because of the actions taken by the Republicans and the lack of pay force, which is the big issue, is now scheduled for 2033 to not run out of money, because Social Security is that strong and that solvent. There's no truth to the fact that this isn't a strong program. The truth is that it hasn't been enhanced in more than 20 years. That's the truth. It's congressional neglect. So by not doing that, it moves it up to insolvency. And anyone who listens to the news, if as a senior, is alarmed and saying, hey, wait a minute. Is this program still going to be here? Well, yes, it'll be there. But if Congress does nothing, there would be a cut across the board, and it will hurt the people at the very low end of the scale and the people that this is all they have more than anyone else. That's why we've said this cannot stand. We have to enact the change, increase and enhance Social Security benefits across the board, make sure nobody retires into poverty. Don't be double taxing Social Security. Make sure that if you were a teacher, a police officer, a firefighter, a municipal person, you get the Social Security that you paid in for. That's your money and you get, but also make sure that there's the money in there. And how do we do that? What we say, and I think this astounds people when they hear this, Terry, that we're actually asking billionaires to pay their fair share.
Imagine that.
We're not asking to tax them. And so President Biden said, look, we'll raise the cap on people making over $400,000. Every time I hold a town hall, the first thing I do is say, raise your hand if you're making over $400,000. I've yet to be in a town hall where a hand has gone up, because it's such a de minimis amount of people. And yet, if they paid their fair share, instead of circumventing the law or not paying in, Social Security would not only be solvent, but we'd be able to make all the enhancements that our bill calls for just by having our fellow Americans pay their fair share.
Absolutely.
Fair share. That's all they're asking for.
Yeah.
And so I can't commend you enough for your steadfast persistence, and especially on our committee, the committee that deals with taxation, of saying, hey, you guys, we're not asking you to do anything extraordinary than any other person would do. Why should a billionaire not pay what someone making $50,000 a year has to pay? It makes no sense.
You're
And so
absolutely
when
right.
people hear it, they say, yeah, that would make sense. And so you may recall President Biden proposed lifting the cap on people over $400,000. And that's what the bill proposes to do, and shuts down the loopholes that the very wealthy use. Some pay nothing at all. Some are done paying their Social Security on January 1st. They pay once and that's it, because there's a cap. That cap grows every year. It's currently $173,000. Next year, it'll be slightly more. In my opinion, there shouldn't be a cap at all. But the Biden proposal made the most sense, because it said lift the cap on people making over $400,000, have them pay what a person making $50,000 has to pay. Don't force people to cut their benefits, lose benefits, or pay more at that level. Have everyone, every American, pay their fair share. That's what keeps, and that's what truly the safety net for entrepreneurialism, open markets, and capitalism is all about. And true billionaires understand that, and
They do.
They're willing to pay their fair share.
Yeah.
As they should be. They shouldn't
But
be.
we in Congress have got to act. And that's why your leadership has just been so important, John. I mean, the Social Security 2100 Act, which is what we've been talking about, you are the father, the author of this, and the brainchild. And I have to tell you, you are doing an amazing job of explaining to people, especially our Republican colleagues, how this is also their issue too. Their constituents are just as concerned as our constituents are. And so I think that the genius of the bill is that it is about enhancement and strengthening Social Security. And it would be the largest, gain that we've had in Social Security since 1971. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about the bill, but I know that you have been a fierce advocate of it, and you have time and time again, Congress after Congress after Congress, been steadfast in making sure that we hold those who make more accountable to paying more. And as you said, I don't know anyone in my town. I don't ask them if they make over $400,000. I can tell you they don't. And but the reality is that we should make them pay more. It's not fair that we cap it at an amount where an ordinary person and a trillionaire pays exactly the same amount going into the fund. You want to talk a little bit more about the bill, but you have been such a champion, and I'm proud co-sponsor of that bill with you. And when we're in the trenches and we're dealing with folks like Elon Musk and Trump, and they're all like trying to privatize it, there's no better person to be in that foxhole with than you, John Larson. So I really want to thank you for your willingness to not only come to Alabama, which you did in Montgomery. I got to bring you to Birmingham and to Selma, and we'll do that. But to also speak with us on the 90th anniversary of Social Security. Do you have any parting words that you would like to stress? For me, I just want to say this, though. Not only am I grateful for your leadership, I am so grateful for your friendship. When I was a newbie, just getting in, you were my caucus chair, and you were so awesome in explaining how we can go about strengthening and protecting Social Security. And you put your money where your mouth is. You totally are standing behind such an amazing bill. And I know that with your guidance and your leadership, we will get this across the finish line. You want to give us any closing thoughts on this, the 90th anniversary?
I think you just said the most important thing, and that's that we will get this across the closing line. And I thank you for your efforts, because here's the deal. It's one thing to talk about it, and it's great, and listen, there's a lot of criticism, rightfully so, of the Trump administration.
Yeah.
It's not enough, though, just to criticize. We have to demonstrate to the American people that we're on their side and we're going to deliver. And because of your efforts, because of the leadership of Rich Neal on the Ways and Means Committee, our committee and our subcommittee is going to lead the way so that within the first 100 days that we are in the majority, Social Security will be taken up and voted on so that people will see clearly what the neglect has been and where the relief is coming from and how it will impact them. And as you said, rightfully so, this is not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is an American issue.
Absolutely.
And it's an American issue because, and you can see it in the polling data, 68% of Republicans, 74% of unaffiliates, 92% of Democrats all believe that Social Security needs to be not only protected, but enhanced to reflect the times we're living in, especially in this post-COVID inflationary period that people are going through. And all people, and you have been such a vital voice in this, talking about the erosion of the middle class before our eyes, kids graduating college with mountains of debt, unable to find work, unable to buy housing in these ages. And this is all things that we are working and focused on. But if there isn't the essential thing holding us all together in this great system and great country of America, like Social Security, then we've lost our way. Thank you for being an original co-sponsor. You're far too modest and taking those individual stories of people in Alabama and how they're impacted and turning them into law that benefits and helps them and only helps every economy and every district in these United States. Thanks for having me again, Terri.
Well, amen to that. And on this 90th anniversary of Social Security, I want to leave you with 5 words. Take your hands off our Social Security. Thank you, John. And stay tuned for the next Terri Talk.